Hey everyone, what is up? It is I, DPX. Welcome to the 2023 movie ranking. This is every movie I saw that came out in 2023, ranked from the worst to the best. This is going up a lot later than I would usually like to. Hopefully this won't happen again. I like doing these in January so I can catch up on some movies I missed. Plus there's one movie that I'll talk about later that I really wanted to see before doing this list, and I'm happy I saw it. This is my ranking of every movie from 2023 that I saw from worst to best in a tier list, and at the end of the video I will give you an actual ranking from worst to best. But before you do that, you know what to do. Be sure to like this video, subscribe, and hit the bell, leave a comment, or I will poison you. So we're starting off this list with a bang. It's in alphabetical order. So the first up we got is Air. I think already we have an S tier. This movie is based on a true story. You know, it's based on the story of how, like, Nike got the Air Jordans to become a thing, and even though it is, I guess in a way by association, a sports movie because it has to do with sports. It's not, you know, you're not watching a sport, you know, necessarily. It's not about sports, but it's still an underdog story. But the underdog is Nike, which is something that does not sound right, but it works. You know, Nike was like struggling at this time. They were not able to compete with Adidas and Converse, but they tried their absolute best to sign Michael Jordan. Matt Damon's character is like saw something in Michael Jordan, and we don't really see Michael Jordan through this movie. Like, we kind of meet him through his mom, played by Viola Davis, who's amazing in this. And the cast is great as well. You know, like I mentioned, Matt Damon, he's great. Ben Affleck, he directed this movie, and it's definitely, you know, a great directorial effort from him. Jason Bateman is great in this movie. It's got a great cast, and, you know, I think it should be nominated for Best Picture. I don't know if it will, because I feel like it might have gotten lost in the shuffle this year, or last year. But I'm going to probably say this year, referring to 2023 a lot, but you'll just have to excuse that. But yeah, definitely one of the better movies. It's probably my top 5. Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania. Quantumania. Look, I'm going to put this in C. I feel like a lot of people would have this in D or maybe even F. Usually I put in E tier, you know, because I like to reserve F for, like, maybe 1 or 2 really bottom of the barrel movies. There's one F tier, as you see that there is the F category, but I don't think there's anything in between D or F, so there's no E. Ant-Man the Wasp Quantumania was a movie I was excited for because, you know, you took Ant-Man, which is usually the movie franchise that, from the MCU, that is casual, sort of not too high stakes movies. But now you turn it into an event, and I was excited about that, but in practice, like, seeing it actually happen, it doesn't work, because, like, now you're making the Ant-Man movie, like the third Ant-Man movie, become something that it shouldn't be. It's taking itself a little too seriously, and they reshot, like, the ending, like, a month before the movie came out, and you can feel that. You can feel a bunch of stuff, you know, a bunch of weird behind-the-scenes stuff going on when watching the movie. The CG is not great. And, Kang, you know, Jonathan Majors, you know, say what you want about him now, but, he plays Kang really well, and, you know, you think Kang is really cool, but then you realize, why do we need Kang? Why do we need the Avengers, rather, if Kang gets killed by Ant-Man? If Ant-Man beat Kang, you know? It's just a mess of a movie. This is when I feel like the audience started to not care so much about the MCU, you know? This one feels the most corporate. It's still enjoyable, but, like, not really when you watch it again, necessarily. Barbie, a movie that I was a little bit harder on when it came out, but upon thinking about it, this movie's really good. I'm gonna give it an A tier. The biggest movie of 2023. I feel like I was the only, like, I don't mean to be like this. There's no record of me predicting this, but I feel like I was the only person who thought it was gonna make $1 billion at the box office. I didn't think it was gonna break the records it broke, but yeah. You know, you can't make a Barbie movie unironically in the year 2023. So they didn't. They did some you know, they did something interesting. They told an original story with the Barbie characters and the and Ken and all the Kens out there, and they told a story. Of course, you know, you got Margot Robbie, who was just like 11 out of 10 casting for as Barbie. Like, that is perfect. And even, and you know, similarly, you got Ryan Gosling as Ken. You know, he's amazing, and I'm Just Ken is, you know, I still hear people talking about that song. I feel like a lot of people would have this movie in S tier because of the way, you know, just a lot of people love this movie. I feel like it does kind of drag a bit, and it does kind of, you know, come to a halt when we leave Barbie Land and we get to, like, the Mattel stuff, you know. Specifically when we meet Will Ferrell and his team. Like, I don't know, I just felt like the movie was trying to get those guys to catch up with the rest of the movie, and I don't know, it just didn't feel right. But overall, great movie. Blue Beetle. Yeah, DC had a rough year this year. I'm gonna give it a B tier because it's really good. I think it's DC's lowest grossing movie ever, which sucks because, you know, it's a fine little movie. It's nothing too crazy. It's not like, you know, anything earth-shattering, but it's a fun little movie. You know, Jolo, I'm just gonna call him Jolo. You know, I'm familiar with him from Cobra Kai, and he plays Jaime really well in this movie. You know, and I really love the family aspect. It's kind of like a similar, you know, it's sort of the Spider-Man story, I guess, where, like, kid gets a superpower, and now he has to, like, deal with being a kid and having that superpower. But, like, the part of, like, you know, normally Spider-Man, you know, with Peter, he tries to hide his Spider-Man identity from the people he knows. The family's in on it right away, which adds a cool new dynamic, I feel. It's a fine little movie. I do think at times, you know, it is very generic, and also Susan Sarandon, it's good to see her, but she's, as the villain, she's like the most stereotypical mustache-twirling villain. The only thing she doesn't do is actually twirl her mustache because she doesn't have a mustache. But overall, good movie. Cocaine Bear. That probably just fucked this video from the algorithm. But who cares? I'm cursing a lot, so I don't care. Cocaine Bear was a movie that I was excited for just because it's like, I mean, it's called Cocaine Bear. And adapting this true story, kind of a true story, I'll get into that, into a movie. And while it was fun and there was funny stuff, I feel like a movie called Cocaine Bear, for a movie called Cocaine Bear, yeah, it doesn't really have, it's not really like as crazy as you would expect it to be. I'm gonna give it C because I do believe it is the third most epic movie of all time, with Morbius at number 2 and the original Space Jam at number 1. But, you know, it could be higher up on that list. But it just doesn't really play, I feel like it plays it a little safe. Not in like the, oh, we don't want to offend anyone sort of way, but just, it's just not as bad shit insane as a movie called Cocaine Bear should be. And they took some liberties, you know, it's not exactly based off of a true story. What actually happened is, like, there was a bunch of cocaine that dropped from a helicopter. A bear saw it, sniffed it a lot, but then eventually died because he sniffed a whole lot of cocaine. Like, he died, he overdosed on cocaine. That's not really what happens in this movie. It has a bit of a contrived plot, you know, and it has a good cast, and they deliver a good performance. You know, the late great Ray Liotta's in this. Alden Ehrenreich. Seems like they're having fun with this movie. I just would have liked to see just a little more. I wanted this movie to just go for it, and it doesn't really. You know, it feels like at moments it does, but it doesn't commit completely. So that's a little disappointing, but it is fun. Creed 3. The third in the Creed trilogy, of course. Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut. I'm gonna give it a B tier because B for Michael B. Jordan. No, but seriously though, I enjoyed this one. I feel like I kind of forgot this one came out this year, or in 2023. I think they tell a good story. You know, Michael B. Jordan's character, you know, Adonis Creed, he has a wife, you know, played by Tessa Thompson, and his daughter, who was born in the second movie, but she's a bit more grown up now. And, you know, he's supporting his family while also being, like, a retired but well-beloved boxer. While his friend, played by Jonathan Majors again, who, once again, say what you want, but I think he killed this role as Damien. You know, resurfaces, he comes back into Adonis's life, but then kind of they grow apart, and Damien becomes a boxer, and then it leads to like a boxing match between Adonis and Damien. I found it compelling. I found it entertaining. You know, it's a Rocky movie. It's a Creed movie, a Rocky movie, and you know, it's a lot of fun. There's some issues though. Obviously, I think like, you know, Jonathan Majors is great as Damien, but I feel like they skip certain parts. Like, we see him at a place in his life at some point in the movie that feels like we skipped a whole lot. You know, and the way he gets into the boxing ring, into a match, is like, I don't know about that. Like, I'm not, you know, but it's still a great movie. I feel like, you know, I don't know if it's as good as Creed 1 or 2. It might be on par with 2. I don't think it's better than 1. But, yeah, and it's one of the few movies this year, one of the few, like, big-name movies that came out in, 2023 that, did not bomb. And, yeah, quite a few of these movies bombed, including this next one, Elemental. This is the first time a Pixar movie, at least in a while, of the first time a Pixar movie came out in theaters, and I didn't see it in theaters. I don't know, I just didn't have much of a desire to see it. Apparently it had legs, though, and I feel like that's been somewhat overblown. Like, sure, I'm sure it had legs, but if it became profitable, I think it became profitable through the skin of its teeth. But I recently watched it on Disney+, and I wish I saw this in the theater, because this is way better than I thought it was going to be. I was expecting kind of a mid-movie. It's actually really, I'm going to give it a B tier. But you know what, I don't know if this makes my top 10, but I think it's number 11. So, you know what? I really enjoyed this movie. I think it deserves an A. It's a rom-com, which, you know, isn't something that Pixar has done before, but they do it very well, and it's a very interesting, you know, way to do a rom-com. You know, you have, it's Elemental, so obviously every character, this is like a world where everyone is not a human, but they are, you know, an element. So you got, you know, the two lead characters. There's a girl who's just fire. There's a guy who's just water. There's a bunch of grass people. There's smoke people. And you have a bit of like a Romeo and Juliet sort of thing. Kind of. At least half of it, you know. The only thing, it does tackle quite a lot. I think it balances all that stuff pretty well, but it is quite a bit that it tries to balance. But yeah, this is an enjoyable movie, and I think it makes sense that it had the legs that it did, because it's a lot of fun. And yeah, Pixar are great, you know. Five Nights at Freddy's. This was a movie I was gonna watch this movie, you know. They announced that it was coming out day and date with, I'm not putting in F tier, I'm just putting it there so I can put it down. They announced that it was coming out day and date in theaters and on Peacock, which normally isn't a good sign when they do that, because whenever they do that, they did that Halloween Ends, which that movie was really damn bad. They did that Halloween Ends. I think they did that with Firestarter, which I didn't see Firestarter, and from what I've heard, thank God I haven't seen that movie. So, you know, that definitely hindered my excitement for Five Nights at Freddy's. Plus, I'm not the biggest fan of Five Nights at Freddy's. I'm gonna get some flack for this, but I always thought Five Nights at Freddy's was a little overrated. I never thought it was that scary, and I think, you know, it was a little too much. Like, there was a little too many games in such a short span of time. I was gonna watch this, but then I just never did until recently. And it's a lot better than I expected, you know. As someone who's not even a fan, like, I was told that fans of the games are gonna get a kick out of it. I'm not a fan of the game, but I got a kick out of it. I don't know if it's higher than C, though, but at the same time, I think it is better than Cocaine Bear and Ant-Man the Wasp: Quantumania, so this is probably actually a B for me, but a low B. The Flash! This one, oh boy. Oh boy, this one's a tough one, because, look, I don't think it's that bad. A lot of people clicked on this, and I don't know if you predicted that I'd have the Flash on here or not, but like, you probably thought it'd be here, but I don't think it's that bad. And I'll explain why in a bit, but I do think it's a C tier. Yeah, obviously, people take the CGI, and the CGI is, like, laughably bad. I will not, like, fight you on that. The CGI, there's no excuse for the CGI to be this bad. People also took their opinion on Ezra Miller, and, you know, they also took all the, behind-the-scenes troubles of this movie. They took all that, you know, the CGI, the behind-the-scenes, and Ezra Miller, and I feel like they used that as ammunition against this movie. And, you know, I was definitely very high on this movie when it first came out, but over time, it's definitely not that good. It's definitely mid with some really good stuff in it. I don't think it's an F tier. You know, I really like the story about how Barry, you know, the Flash, he wants to be with his mom because he lost his mom at a very young age. You know, as someone who lost a parent, I can resonate with that. And it's a good setup for why, you know, the Flash wants to go back in time, and then why all this multiversal shit is happening. And I do think, you know, Michael Keaton as Batman, I think it's great to see him back. He looks like he's having fun. Sasha Calle as Supergirl, you know, she was great. And I thought Ezra Miller was tolerable in this movie. But the CGI is really bad, and the movie is also, you know, kind of all over the place. It's not great. I think it's a tolerable movie, so I think it will stay in C tier. You know, you can dislike that. I don't know what movie those people saw when, like, you heard about it before the movie came out. You had all these insiders saying that this is one of the best comic book movies of all time. I don't know what movie they saw, because it's not that good. But personally, if it's an F tier, I don't quite get it. I feel like it's just the CG that people like to harp on, you know? It's not a bad movie. I don't think it's that bad, but it's definitely not that good. Gran Turismo is a movie that I was not expecting to be so good. I just wasn't expecting this movie to be so good, but I really enjoyed it, so I'm gonna give it an A. Like top 10. I think it's in my top 10. And that's mainly because, you know, this came out after a whole bunch of just box office bombs. There's bomb after bomb after bomb. When this I think we needed a nice, feel-good, underdog sports movie. And it's based off of a true story, you know. When they announced that they were adapting, when they were making a Gran Turismo movie, I was like, how the fuck are you gonna make a Gran Turismo movie? What is there? Like, what do you have in order to make a Gran Turismo movie? Then I heard that it was based off of a true story about some guy who played Gran Turismo and was really good at it, and then became a racer, a tournament or something, held by Sony, to take people who play Gran Turismo and have them, you know, become a racer. I thought that was, like, that's an interesting thing that apparently actually happened, and they make it into a movie. That's a great way to, like, kind of make a Gran Turismo movie, if you know what I mean. The cast is great. You know, you have David Harbour as the coach, Orlando Bloom, it's good to see him again as, you know, the sort of like the businessman who organized this whole thing. The kid's dad is played by Jaimon Hansu, and he's great. And the mom is played by one of the Spice Girls. I forget her name, but yeah, one of the Spice Girls. And I forget the name of the kid, the racer, but he killed it. It's a hell of a fun time. You know, it's a feel-good movie, you know, a crowd pleaser. It's, you know, it's a great sports movie, somewhat based off of a video game. You know, it kind of checks all of those boxes, and it manages to do it very well. It's not higher. It could have honestly been higher, but I feel like, you know, it doesn't quite, you know, obviously if it's based off of a true story, you're trying to cover a certain span of time. So there's like some, like I read up on the true story. There's like they tell like 5 years worth of something that happened in like they go through that in like 20 minutes or something, you know. So great movie and a crowd pleaser, feel good. It makes you feel good, which, you know, that's what you can, like, I don't know what I'm trying to say, but that's awesome. Next up, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. You know, in a year where the MCU, and also the DCEU, but for this subject, the MCU really, I feel like, took a nosedive in terms of its quality and also its perception. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is probably one of their best movies. Like, I mean, definitely, like, one of their better movies. Possibly their best movie since Endgame. But I think it might be one of their best movies they've done. I'm giving it an A tier. This is also in my top 10. And, you know, there's no, like, I think James Gunn had the script for this movie done for years. Like, before he got fired from Marvel, or from Disney, and then brought back, and like in that time he worked on the Suicide Squad, you know. So before all that happened, I think he had the script for this movie done, and it had minimal changes, you know. It only had the only changes were done, I think, were done by James Gunn himself. This one is like the one, it's a different kind of MCU movie where it's like, this kind of is the end of something, you know what I mean? There are certain characters in this movie that we're not going to see again. Like, I don't think we're seeing Drax ever again. I'm not even sure if we're going to see Gamora again, or Nebula. We're definitely not seeing the Guardians of the Galaxy, like, as we knew them. I don't think we're going to see them all together again. But I think what this movie does the best is Rocket, you know? And, you know, with the trilogy done, Rocket is kind of the main character. You see that, you know. You kind of get the feeling Star-Lord's the main character, you know, Peter Quill. But Rocket is, like, kind of the focus of this movie. And they do a great job making him the focus of this movie while having him in, like, a, like, I guess you can say, like, a comatose state the whole time. And it shows the great, like, family dynamic between every member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, because they're trying to save Rocket the whole movie. It has great emotion, you know, but it's still funny. You know, a lot of MCU movies really fuck up the humor. You know, it just, you know, look at Thor, Love and Thunder. The Marvels kind of has some weird humor choices. I'll get to that. But Guardians of the Galaxy has always been really good with its humor. For the most part, there's sometimes where they go a little bit, like, you know, it kind of lingers, but I think they balance, like, the humor and the emotion very well. The one problem I had with this is Adam Warlock. You know, they teased him at the end of Guardians 2, and I guess James Gunn felt like, well, we teased him, I can't really not have him in this movie, but, like, I don't really know what he could do for this movie, so I'll just have him show up every, like, 30 minutes or something, you know? That's kind of what it felt like. But other than that, this is a great movie. I feel like this one easily got forgotten because Marvel, I feel like the MCU keeps putting out clangers. But this is definitely one of their better movies in a very long time. Haunted Mansion, our first D tier. You know, when I saw the movie, I thought it was fine, but now I can't really tell you much that happened. I know, like, it had a good cast, you know. Yeah, I remember there was, like, a really dark, you know, like, sad sort of, like, backstory to, the main character. I can't even tell you his name. It was weird. They decided to put this out in theaters in July just to have it released on Disney Plus in October. Why not just make it a Disney Plus movie in October? I remember thinking, like, you know, this movie wasn't too bad, you know. It doesn't do anything that great, doesn't do anything that bad, though. But now I can't really tell you anything about this movie. So that's why it's a D tier. It's not bad. You know, I haven't seen too many movies this in 2023 that were worse than this necessarily. You know, and I think what's an F tier is definitely way worse than this. Like, I'd see Haunted Mansion any day over what's an F tier. But yeah, I can't quite tell you about this one. It's time we get another S tier, as we got the Holdovers. this movie was not on my radar, but I kept hearing people, like, you know, praising it. I kept hearing, like, Paul Giamatti getting, like, award consideration for his role. So I'm like, yeah, I'll check this out. It's basically a story about this kid at a boarding school. You know, so his parents, you know, he doesn't have a good relationship with his mom and his stepdad. And this teacher, played by Paul Giamatti, who, you know, he's a bit of an asshole, but the kid, for Christmas break, you know, he can't go home, so he's a holdover. So he has to stay at the school with his teacher. Paul Giamatti's character is like an asshole for most of the movie, you know. And, like, there's a line at the beginning where a character gets, like, a grade for his test back, and it's, like, an F, and he goes, hey, I can't fail this class. And then Paul Giamatti is like, oh, don't sell yourself short. I believe you can. It's like, wow, what an asshole. Can you imagine, like, your teacher in, like, high school or a professor in college, like, telling you that? Like, jeez. But I thought, like, okay, this movie, I predicted where it was going to go. It's like Paul Giamatti's character is going to become, like, you know, more humble. He's going to be humbled. He's going to come around. He's going to be a bit nicer. And that is what happens, you know. But the way it went, while it's nothing too crazy, I do think it was the right way to go, and they went that way in an interesting way. Paul Giamatti definitely does deserve, like, to be nominated for Best Actor, and there's other performances too. Like, there's this, like, like, cook lady, I forget the actress's name, but I heard her, like, getting a lot of award consideration for Best Supporting Actress. Absolutely, she is amazing. Even the kid is great. And I like the aesthetic they went with as well. It makes it feel, like, old-fashioned, like, I don't know what other word to use. I don't want to say old, because it still doesn't feel outdated or anything. It definitely feels like the aesthetic makes the movie pop, I feel, in a good way. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. You know, I watched this and I didn't, like, gas it up or anything, but I thought it was a fun time, but kind of like Haunted Mansion. Nothing really stands out. Nothing that great about it stands out necessarily, but I do think it's more of a C tier, because, like, Haunted Mansion was a movie I forgot about, like, the next day. Indiana Jones, it took me a little longer to forget about it. Now, it's a fun time. I do remember having a lot of fun with the movie. You know, it's a fun time at the movies, but at the same time, you know, there's something that's somewhat unappealing about an 80-year-old Harrison Ford playing a 70-year-old Indiana Jones, who's, like, this grumpy old man, you know, pouring booze in his coffee and going to his, going to another room on his floor in his apartment, telling the younger guys to, like, keep it down, you know, keep the music down, you know, being, like, your typical old man, you know what I mean? There's not, like, I don't know if I wanted to see Indiana Jones in that state of life, you know what I mean? And it does, like, the movie feels kind of forced. Like, the whole movie kind of feels forced. This doesn't feel like, you know, say what you want about Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but it wasn't, I thought the ending was great. You know? But then we learn in this movie, like, stuff that I kind of just didn't want to learn. Like, I feel like you didn't need to do this. Like the son, Mutt, died in war, and then it drove Indy and Marion apart. You know, I feel like that wasn't necessary. I feel like they could have maybe had Indy and Marion just grow apart, but, like, Mutt is out somewhere. I don't know. That just, I feel like I feel like you had to undo, like, a very high point of a kind of a mid movie in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, just to make this movie, just to have it exist. And also, Phoebe Waller-Bridge plays a character, you know, kind of like she kind of replaces, in a way, you know, Shia LaBeouf's character from Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but she's a fucking asshole. Like, she is so unlikable. Like, she really hurts the movie for me. Like, she's just talking down to Indy throughout the whole movie, and it's just like, fuck off. Like, who are you? You know, Phoebe Waller-Bridge has gotten a lot of hate for this role, which I don't think is fair. But, like, God, like, I do not like what they did with her. Overall, though, I did have a fun time with this movie. I think, you know, Harrison Ford, it is a nice, you know, swan song for him as this character, as one of the most iconic movie characters. It's a little disappointing that a franchise as legendary as Indiana Jones goes out on one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. But at the same time, why does this movie have a budget of $300 million? What the fuck? Why would... You know how much money you have to make in order for it to even break even? Like... The movie that delayed this video because I really wanted to see this movie, The Iron Claw. And I'm happy I saw this movie because this is an S tier. And it might possibly be, I don't know if it is my movie of the year. I was just about to say it might possibly be my favorite, my number one. But it's at the very least top 3. This is based off of a true story about a family of wrestling, you know. I'm a wrestling fan. It's about the Von Erich family. And basically, the story is this guy, a foreign heel. If you don't know, in wrestling, a heel is a bad guy. Wrestler named Fritz Von Erich was a big deal when he was a wrestler, but he never won the world champion. So he always put that pressure on his sons for them to become wrestlers, so they can bring the world champion into the Von Erich family. So you got a nice brother dynamic, you know, and you know, you have Zac Efron, who plays, it kind of told from his perspective, Kevin Von Erich. Jeremy Allen White is in it, who plays Kerry Von Erich, who you might know in the WWF. He was the Texas Tornado. And, you know, there's David Von Erich and Mike Von Erich. They don't include Chris Von Erich. There's another brother, believe it or not, who's not even in this movie. And it's just a story of tragedy, you know, and I want you guys to watch it, even though it is based off of a true story. I want you guys to watch this movie. It is still in theaters, so you know, maybe go to the theater and watch it. But it's very sad. It is a story of tragedy, almost Shakespearean tragedy. If you know the story of the Von Erichs, you know that it is tragic, you know, and it almost doesn't even seem real that this actually happened. And I feel like the way that this movie does it, the way that this movie shows the events that happen, it does it in such a way where you feel like you're a part of them, you know. I think one thing this movie does very well is the bond between the brothers. Like, you feel it. You feel these four are actually brothers, and they actually, like, you know, they are each other's ride or dies, you know what I mean? So when the tragedy hits, it hits you. And I will admit, I'm not, like, I don't know if I really have the ability to cry at a movie. I'm not, and that's not a flex. That's not me saying, like, look at how I'm no baby. I don't cry like that. No, I'm saying that as a bad thing. I don't think I have the ability to cry at a movie. This movie got me choked up. You know, even as someone who knew, like, where the story was going, because I'm familiar with this story, it still got me choked up. And, you know, the performance from Zac Efron, you know, this is not really a role he does, but I think he deserves to be nominated for Best Performance at the Oscars. This is definitely, yeah, an amazing movie, and might be the best wrestling movie. We got another S tier, Killers of the Flower Moon. This is Martin Scorsese's most recent film, you know, and he's got, like, Leonardo DiCaprio in there, he's got Robert De Niro in there, you know, two people who really like working with Scorsese. It's also another Scorsese film that's, like, you know, 3.5 hours. But unlike some of his other movies where they feel long for the sake of being long, this one I feel like earns the 3.5 hour runtime, you know. I watched it, like, you know, in chunks, like almost like a mini-series, because I think that's the best way to consume this movie. But long story short version, a story of how the American government killed a whole bunch of Native Americans, you know. Well, it's kind of based off of a book that's based off of that story. You know, Killers of the Flower Moon was a book that told the story of that story. But the book tells the story from the perspective of the FBI, so it's almost like a mystery, a detective thing. So you find out a bunch of stuff as like big reveals, but the movie is more of an account of stuff that happens, you know what I mean? So, like, the movie's basically a giant spoiler for the book. I'm just mentioning that, but at the same time, like, the way the movie is shown and the story, the accounts of what is happening is told is very well done. You know, Leonardo DiCaprio, it's just like, of course he's gonna deliver a good performance, and he does. He's kind of like this, like, we follow him, but he's not a good person. And he's not smart either. He's kind of an idiot, but he's a dumb asshole, you know. But, like, asshole's not the right word. Like, he's not a good person, and you feel that. You don't like him. And Robert De Niro is also, like, you know, it's slowly, like, you know who he really is, but you find out, like, really what, like, he was behind a lot of this, you know. And Lily Gladstone, you know, she's been getting a lot of awards, but she kills it. Like, I think, like, she's kind of an unknown. Like, I don't know of any other roles she's had before this, but she's able to hold her own in a movie that has Leonardo DiCaprio and Robert De Niro, you know, and she stands out. You know, she's really good. So yeah, it's long, you know, 3.5 hours, but I think it's really good, you know, and Scorsese continues to show us why he's one of the best directors in the business. The Marvels, the first MCU movie, probably ever, that came out, and I was just like, you know, I can wait. I don't have to see this immediately. I'm just not feeling it. And, yeah, I did see it eventually, hence why it's on here. I'm gonna give it a D. Now, look, I feel like there's a lot of people on the internet saying it's the worst piece of fiction ever conceived by man. You know, and I don't think that's true. You know, I think there's still people hate Brie Larson, and they like to just hate anything she's like that, whatever. You know, there's people out there, but then there's people who are trying to defend this movie and say it is the second coming of Christ. It's not like bottom of the barrel. Like, I've seen videos pop up more than once that say, like, The Marvels is the worst movie of all time. No, the fuck it's not. It might be, like, D tier, might be a tier above the worst movie of 2023. It's still, like, way better than what I'm gonna put in F tier. This is the movie that bombed, like, the lowest grossing MCU movie. And that's because, like, you had to do homework, you know? You have 3 characters. You have, Captain Marvel, of course, but you have Monica Rambeau, who's, like, a side character from WandaVision. And you also have Miss Marvel, like the main character of the MCU's, like, least viewed show. I think, I don't remember if Secret Invasion beat Miss Marvel for the least viewed show on Disney Plus, or the MCU show, but not a lot of people saw Miss Marvel, which I did kind of like Miss Marvel. And I will say, definitely, Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan, as Miss Marvel, she is the standout. Like, she brings this infectious charm, you know, she's, like, a fangirl of Captain Marvel, so having the interaction where she meets Captain Marvel is, you know, it's fun, you know, but even then, like, Captain Marvel herself, like, Carol, is not really, like, we still don't really know her that well, I feel, and this is now the, like, 3rd movie we've had with her. Like, obviously she wasn't in Endgame that much, but, like, you know, this is her 2nd movie, and I feel like we still don't know her that well. She's sort of just there, you know what I mean? And speaking of sort of just being there, Monica feels like she's kind of just there, you know? In fact, I feel like every character, all 3 of them, feel like they're just there. And I don't really know how that is possible. We have 3 leads and all 3 of them are kind of just there. Like, it doesn't really focus on any one of them in particular. Like, obviously, you know, I feel like Captain Marvel gets the most screen time, but she I can't really tell her anything she does in this movie. She doesn't really, like, leave much of an impact. And even, like, you know, you have some stuff between Monica and Carol where there's, like, you know, you can explore that where, like, you know, Monica as a little girl looked up to Carol as, like, her mom's friend, but then, and was leaving but said she'll come back, and she never came back, you know. That's something interesting they could have, you know, tapped into, and they do for like 2 seconds, and then they just don't really bother with it. I feel like you could have done more with that. And also, it just, there's some bizarre, just some bizarre choices with this movie. For example, like, the main plot is that there is a planet that does not have any air, but there's still people living on the planet. It's like, what? Huh? There's this other planet that they go to where people talk in song, and it's just like, you know, it's superficially enjoyable, it's superficially fun, you know. It's like, oh, that's kind of cute, but then you realize it's like, what is this? The movie is carried by Iman Vellani, you know, Kamal Khan, and this, when we get to see her family, you know, her mom, her dad, and her brother, like, that's really fun. And also, I will say, like, the mid-credit scene is definitely awesome, but this just, it doesn't surprise me that this is the MCU's biggest bomb. You know, I didn't want to hate it, and I don't hate it, but it's just not that good. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always. I'm gonna give this a C. On the one hand, you know, this is sort of like a reunion, kind of like mini movie. It's like, it goes into, it's not a short movie. You know, it's, I don't know if I should say mini movie. It's not a short film, you know, but it's less than an hour long. It was on Netflix, so, but it's a movie. I'll throw it on here. And it's definitely, like, it's definitely nice to see all these actors and these characters reunite, but it's, you know, it's a typical Power Rangers story. It's kind of forgettable, and there's, like, the two most popular cast members from, Power Rangers, you know, Jason David Frank and Amy Jo Johnson, you know, the two most popular, you know, people associated with the Power Rangers, like, by a landslide, are not in this movie. And obviously this came out after the tragic passing of Jason David Frank, but this was filmed before that, though. So, you know, and, you know, it was there, just, they didn't want to come back, I'm pretty sure. That's what happened. They didn't want to come back, so, but it's still, you know, you still feel the absence. It does get heartfelt at the end with, you know, the tribute to Jason David Frank and also the girl who played the Yellow Ranger. You know, I thought that was nice. And, you know, you definitely feel, it definitely does, it does feel, you know, emotional at times. But on the other hand, like, yeah, it's basically, you got two people from one of the Power Rangers show, you know, David Yost as the Blue Ranger and Walter Jones as the Black Ranger. You know, they're back. Walter Jones is, you know, he's fine. David Yost just he looks incredibly checked out throughout the whole movie. He looks like he's dozing off. And then there's the girl who's like the daughter of the Yellow Ranger, and she's, you know, no disrespect to the actress, but I feel like someone needed to reel her in a bit, because she's acting like a fucking cartoon character. She's overacting a lot, and it's not her fault. Once again, someone could have told her, like, hey, reel it in, okay? Like, it's just not, I know it's Power Rangers, it's basically a live-action cartoon, but, like, I don't know, it just seemed odd. Overall, I think it's, like, you know, as someone who, I never got too into the Power Rangers, but, like, you know, I have somewhat of a connection to them. Not a massive one, but I like the Power Rangers. I found this enjoyable, and it got emotional, but, you know, there's some odd acting, big omissions. That's really no one's fault, but, you know, and yeah, it's a perfectly fine movie, but it's a C tier. No Hard Feelings, the raunchy comedy starring Jennifer Lawrence, who, how do I explain this? So basically, if you've seen the trailer, you probably know, but it's the movie where she visits, like, this, you know, older couple who are trying to get a someone to date their 18-year-old son. So a 30-year-old Jennifer Lawrence is doing that. In the movie, it's because she's like kind of in debt, so it's like a rich family that's paying her to date their son. But like, I don't know, just what if, like, immediately this is one where it's like, just reverse the roles, you know, the gender, like, reverse the genders. If it was a 30-year-old man being paid to date an 18-year-old girl, like, I don't know about that. I watched the movie and it's fine. It's funny. There's some funny moments, but you know, the concept definitely hurt it. Another thing that hurt it is that for most of the movie, Jennifer Lawrence is just not likable, like, at all. And she kind of, I guess, has an arc to be more likable, you know, to come around, but it's like, she doesn't come around, she's not a likable person until, like, the end of the movie. So most of the movie, she's just not likable, you know what I mean? I did have fun with this. So I don't feel good putting it in D, but it might be very low C. I might change up the order when I, like, put them in order from, like, worst to best. But yeah, an odd movie, if a bit funny. I did get a kick out of it, but it's not, it's, I don't even know why I watched it, you know. I guess I found the trailer funny and interesting, but, like, this is a weird movie. Oppenheimer. Before I even talk about this movie, I just want to say it's kind of funny that in a year where so many movies bombed, the one about the creation of the bomb did very well. You know, how ironic is that? But yeah, this is another S tier. This is you know, I'm surprised how well this movie did, you know, making almost $1 billion, and I think it will make $1 billion if they re-release it in theaters for, like, Oscar season. So I think this is getting nominated for Best Picture. But, like, you know, a 3-hour, you know, biopic about the guy who created the bomb, and it's mostly people talking, you know what I mean? And it's one of the most riveting movies I have ever seen, at least, you know, I'll say ever. It's one of those movies that makes you kind of afraid of the world we live in, you know? Like, it makes you think, it makes you question a lot of things. When they were first creating the bomb, it was like, you know, the chances of this destroying the entire world is near zero. And it's like, how about 0? That would be nice. So it's like, how many times was stuff introduced into the world, and that could have, like, had the whole world meet its end, and we just didn't know about it, you know? There's also a scene where Oppenheimer meets Harry Truman, you know, the U.S. president at the time, and he's just an asshole to him, you know? Truman was just an asshole to Oppenheimer. It's like, how many presidents were like that? You know what I mean? And not to mention, it has a huge cast. Some actors that, like, you see them and it's like, I didn't know you were in this movie. You know, like, so many people were in this movie that just popped up. And a lot of movies where it's like an actor that pops up and it's like, oh, I know that guy. It usually takes you out of the movie because it's like, ooh, that's you. No, I didn't feel that way. It was just like, oh, you're in this movie. Okay, cool. Oh, and you're playing this character. So that does sound like exactly what I just explained it doesn't do, but it just doesn't, it didn't feel, it didn't feel like it took me out of the movie like how it does with other movies. Not to mention, I feel like you can't hear someone talk about this movie without hearing someone mention Robert Downey Jr. in this movie. Give him that Best Supporting Actor award now. Just give it to him. He kills it, you know. And the way the story is told in, you know, a Christopher Nolan way, and I think that's done very well. It's a hell of a time. It's riveting, and you don't expect that for a 3-hour movie with people talking about the creation of the bomb. Scream 6. I've heard a lot of people disappointed with this one. And I've seen this pop up a lot on most disappointing lists. I'm gonna give it a B. I don't think it was that bad. You know, I think it's a fun, you know, a nice follow-up to Scream 5, or just Scream, as they called it for some reason. I don't know, it's been a while since I watched it. I do remember a lot of bullshit happened, like, there was certain characters, like, one guy got stabbed multiple times, and this other girl got, like, stabbed a lot too. But they're just fine, and I feel like the movie's kind of afraid to kill them off. But, like, I like the twist they did with Ghostface. There's always a twist with Ghostface. But, like, this one I think was unique, you know. Obviously, they did the thing where there's two of them, but there's... the way that they got two of them is interesting. I'll say that. And also, going in Manhattan is, like, I thought that was a good setting. And, you know, I think it makes sense that they didn't have Neve Campbell return, because... then it's sort of just like, oh, every time Neve Campbell's gonna, or Sidney Prescott's gonna show up, and I think they address her absence in a respectful way, and yeah, I don't think it was that bad. Shazam! Fury of the Gods. You know, I was definitely higher on this movie when it came out, when I saw it, but yeah, I don't remember. I think it's a C. It might honestly be a D tier. Not that it does anything particularly, like, offensively wrong, but I just feel like it's just a generic superhero movie. Like, the first Shazam felt fresh. It was like Big, but a superhero. Like the movie Big, but about the superhero, about Shazam. And you're totally able to tell, to buy Zachary Levi as this child who just transformed into, like, a big buff man. But, like, this tells a story about Billy, you know, the kid, you know, growing up, and he's about to move away to college. So, you know, you don't really get that feeling of him being a kid anymore, because he's not really a kid. And also, like, I love the moment in the first movie where, like, all the foster siblings, like, get, you know, the superpower. They all become versions of Shazam. But them just being Shazam throughout the whole movie in this one, I feel like it was a little too many characters, you know. The movie's trying to keep up with them, and it just didn't feel special. Similarly, there's, like, you know, you got Helen Mirren and Lucy Liu in here as the villains, which is, like, that's awesome, but they were kind of generic. Like, and there was a third villain twist that seemed very, you know, predictable. Upon, like, over time, this hasn't really left much of an impact. And yeah, by the way, I haven't seen Aquaman yet, and I guess I won't for this ranking. Alright, possibly my movie of the year. It's between this, Oppenheimer, and Iron Claw, but I think it might be this, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. What could I say about this movie that hasn't already been said? One of the best animated movies I've ever seen, one of the best comic book movies I've ever seen, the single best Spider-Man movie. That big ass glare is the sun shining. This is the morning, but yeah, that sun is annoying. Sorry about that, guys, but let's keep it going here. Like, this follows up the first movie in such a great way, and it definitely, like, it explains some things from the first movie. It's like, why there are times in the first movie where, like, all the other Spider-Men didn't want Miles to join them for things, you know what I mean? It's like, why is that? The movie doesn't really tell you why exactly. You kind of find out here. It's like, oh, you weren't supposed to be Spider-Man. It was supposed to be this guy, the Spot. He eventually became the Spot. And can I just say, the Spot is an amazing villain. It's like, you know, he starts off as, like, this goofy villain, the villain of the week, you know, but then, like, throughout the movie, he becomes more and more of a threat. He becomes, like, more, and it's like, it's revealed that he's going to do something, and it's like, holy shit, like, this is, like, I'm sorry I ever underestimated you, Spot. And also the animation, like, it's not even worth mentioning, but the animation is just out of this world. Like, each character has a different animation style. Each universe they go into has a different look, you know, like, and when certain things happen, like when Gwen is like talking to her dad, you know, the whole like background, the way it moves and all that, the colors and, you know, just the atmosphere kind of changing is just like, that is amazing. The look of this movie is like, it looks amazing. I think this is like, I don't think it'll happen because it's the Oscars, but like I think this needs to be nominated for Best Picture. It won't, and the Academy might as well say like, hey, no animated movies, because it's like, come on, like, that's another conversation, but absolutely, like, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse might be one of the best movies I've ever seen. The second biggest movie of 2023, Super Mario Bros. There was a lot of people, at least a lot of people I knew, that really, like, gassed this movie up as the second coming of God. For what I saw, it's good. For an Illumination movie and a video game adaptation, it's fucking, like, top-notch. But as a movie, it's good. I think, put it maybe high C. I don't usually like Illumination, because I think, like, usually they go for, you know, they make movies that are very cheap and that are very safe. You can say that this movie was rather cheap. Like, it did not have as big of a budget as you probably thought it did. You can say that this movie is also kind of playing it safe, because Super Mario Bros. Is a major IP, but this isn't the first Super Mario Bros. Movie, and the first one did not do very well. But about the movie, if you're a Mario fan, like me, Mario is like, I fucking love Mario. So if you're a Mario fan like me, you'll have a blast with this movie. It is nostalgia overload, in a good way. Overload, I don't think is a good thing necessarily, but like, I mean this in a good way. It is nostalgia overload, and, you know, when it lacks in plot, I'll admit, it, like, the review said it doesn't have a plot. That's not true. It doesn't have a very, like, strong plot. It doesn't have a very thick plot, but it does have a plot. But what it lacks in plot, it definitely makes up for in just being fun. Like, this is definitely, like, one of the most, like, the most fun I've had in a movie, like, for what? One of the most, I don't know how to fucking say this, one of the most fun I've had at a movie. That, the broken English is there, but fuck you. It's a fun time. The voice performances, I can touch on that a little bit, because there's, like, you know, people didn't like Chris Pratt as Mario. I think the voice I think Chris Pratt in general is still just an odd pick, but, like, he did well. He's definitely like a Brooklynese Mario, you know, not really an Italian accent, but you can tell the Brooklynese is in there. And I didn't think Seth Rogen as Donkey Kong was that bad. A lot of people didn't like him as Donkey Kong, but I didn't think he was that bad. Of course, Charlie Day as Luigi, Jack Black as Bowser, like, they nail it. I think Anya Taylor-Joy as Peach was really good. Keegan-Michael Key as Toad was really good. The one voice performance that I just did not like at all was Fred Armisen as Cranky Kong, because, like, that was just Fred Armisen doing Fred Armisen. You know what I mean? But there's Mario references up the ass. They referenced some stuff that I didn't think were gonna be referenced. There was a bunch of, there's like a Kid Icarus reference, like, very early on in the movie. And there's some music from the Mario games that are in the movie that I was not expecting to hear, you know, and I love that. So yeah, not like, if you're judging it as a movie critic, this is why it got some terrible reviews. A movie critic whose job it is to see movies and review them, probably not going to get much out of this movie. But if you're a Mario fan, you absolutely will. The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem. I will never forgive you guys for seeing the Meg 2 instead of this movie when it came out. What is wrong with you? But A tier. In fact, probably top of A. Like, I think this is right outside of S. What I said about, like, the animation in Spider-Verse, take that, and I'll just repeat it for Mutant Mayhem. You know, the animation, they do some crazy things with the animation, I feel. Like, at times, the animation looks unfinished, in a good way. Like, that's the style they went with. And I also love how they put the teenage in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of adaptations of TMNT, and the Turtles are, like, adults, you know what I mean? Like, the Michael Bay movies, which I think are not as bad as people say they are, but those are, you can't fucking tell me that they're teenagers. Fuck off. These turtles are kids, and it's like a coming-of-age story, you know? They want to be accepted by, like, everybody, and it just, I found it so much fun, and I'm excited to see the sequels they have planned, and the show that they have planned. One thing that I did not love about this movie was, what they did with the villains. Like, there's a whole, like, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like, there's a whole bunch of villains, that are popular in the TMNT franchise that are in this movie, but I'm not quite sure, like, I don't really like what they did with them, you know what I mean? But either way, I think the best TMNT movie. And last, and certainly least, I told you that there's going to be one movie in F tier, and here it is, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey. Now, normally, it seems a little, you know, mean of me to pick on a movie that has a budget of $100 million, or not even $100 million, $100,000, my bad. $100,000. And if this was just a slasher movie, a very, like, low-budget slasher movie, I wouldn't even care about it. But these guys cheated by using an IP like Winnie the Pooh, which is in the public domain, and now, for fuck's sake, we're getting a sequel, and we're getting a Steamboat Willie slasher, and a Bambi slasher, and a Peter Pan slasher. Fuck off. I went into this movie expecting, like, you know, a movie so bad it's good. No. How are you gonna make a Winnie the Pooh slasher? Okay, you're gonna hear me rant. How are you gonna make a Winnie the Pooh slasher film and take yourself seriously? Like, they actually thought, and I'll get into why I know they actually thought this. They actually thought they were telling, like, a really profound story or some shit. A really, like, great story. They're, like, this is a fucking Winnie the Pooh slasher. What are you doing? Why are you taking it so seriously? Have fun with it. You know what I mean? Like, look at that. I'll zoom in. Look at that. Well, I don't need to zoom in. I'll just show you the poster. Look at that! Are you gonna you're gonna take that seriously? This movie does not have any fun. It's not self-aware at all. And, like, you know, I'm not gonna make fun of its low-budget stuff, you know, where it shows that does not have a high budget, you know. That's because it's $100,000. Whatever. But the story is dog shit. You know, it's just, you know, I guess you have somewhat of an interesting setup of Christopher Robin. Instead of, like, you know, Winnie the Pooh and Piglet. Tigger's not in this. He was not in the public domain when this movie came out. But, you know, Winnie and Piglet, instead of those being, like, stuffed animals of Christopher Robin's, they were his friends. They were just anthropomorphic animals that were friends with Christopher Robin, which is okay, fine, I guess. But Christopher left them, and now they are out for revenge. Okay, that sounds like an interesting idea if you're gonna have fun with it, but they don't. And then they have, like, this whole thing about these group of girls. One of them has a stalker, you know, and they don't go anywhere with that. So they're trying to be, like, the movie's trying to be all, oh, look at, we're gonna tell this very mature story about this girl who's dealing with a stalker, but they don't go anywhere with it, because it's not about that, it's about Winnie the fucking Pooh. And also, like, they charge, like, I saw this on Peacock, which, that's another thing. This movie's on a fucking streaming service. But they charge, like, I heard they charge, like, $20 for this in the theater, and it made, like, $500 million. I don't know if it was 500? Wait, I'm gonna have to look that up. Okay, 5 million, not 500 million. I was about to say, well, that's no way did it make 500 million. Which by most standards, like, 5 million at the box office is, like, pitiful, but like this is a movie of $100,000 of a budget, so that's really good. They made back their budget big time, but they couldn't take that money and run with it. You know, YouTuber Cody Leach, who I'm familiar with his content, he reviewed this movie, and then everyone involved with this movie, right down to like the writers, the directors, I think even the composer, attacked him for this. You know, and they attacked some other people for criticizing this movie. It's like, not only is this movie not self-aware of what the fuck it is, neither are the people who made it. They did it with a straight face. Fuck this movie, fuck the people who made it. I don't even know if I'm going to hate watch Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey 2, or Bambi Reckoning. I think the Steamboat Willie movie is I could be wrong, but I think that's different people, so maybe I'll watch that one for the lulz, but fuck this movie. I'm serious. So that's the ranking, or that's my tier list. Now to give you my actual ranking from the worst to the best. So my ranking of all the movies I saw in 2023, from the worst to the best, is Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, Haunted Mansion, The Marvels, Shazam! Fury of the Gods, Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, No Hard Feelings, Cocaine Bear, The Flash, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Once and Always, Super Mario Bros., Five Nights at Freddy's, Scream 6, Creed 3, Blue Beetle, Elemental, Barbie, Gran Turismo, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem, Killers of the Flower Moon, The Holdovers, Air, Iron Claw, Oppenheimer, and Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse. Now, honestly, Iron Claw, like, that one I honestly thought about putting number 1, but I think it's more just, I've had Spider-Man and Oppenheimer as my top 2 for way longer, so maybe as time goes on, maybe Iron Claw will creep up as my number 1, because I really love that movie. But yeah, overall, that is pretty much my ranking of every movie I saw in 2023, from the worst to the best. Again, sorry this took me a while to do. Holy shit, an hour and 38 minutes. The video's definitely not going to be that long. That's how long I've been going, so we're going to end it. Hopefully, my 2024 movie ranking will have a lot more movies than this. Anyways, be sure to like this video, comment, subscribe, or I will poison you. Bye!